Hi, and welcome to Good Deeds Real Estate with a Mission. I'm Diane Davidson. This is Bill Weidecker. People must get sick of hearing that. Anyway, business partners, life partners, and here we are. Such interesting news, or headlines anyway. And, our last podcast talked about the local market, southern New Hampshire, and really how hot it is. Then the Wall Street Journal, there was a headline today and a story ensuing the story that followed it. And I think that the interesting thing is that people don't understand how much their perception can change the market. And so while we have local conditions or local or regional conditions that we pay a lot of attention to, the headlines do start to influence people's behavior. So the news here in our local market is that it is very opportunistic still for buyers. Rates are better than they had been, and properties are still appreciating, they're still in demand, and it's good news for sellers too because they're still in demand. So I wanted to talk about that in contrast to what you read today in the Wall Street Journal, because sometimes people only read the headlines, and even if they dig deeper in this story, it's really talking about it nationally, right?
That's right. And one of the things that I think is incumbent upon us to do is to give perspective to our clients based on the national headlines and bring it back to the neighborhoods, if you will. Because even in a market like this where everything is pretty vibrant, there are going to be segments of a market that might be a little bit more punky, or certain towns, but not everything is equal. But the headlines are interesting because the Wall Street Journal, top of the fold, front page, so it doesn't get more big than that. It says home sales fall for the 6th straight month. So which means every single month home sales were less than the previous month for the last 6 months. And it's the first time that's happened, so I'm going to just give you some of the details. It's the longest streak of declines in more than 8 years, with one exception, a period during the beginning of the pandemic.
April 2020, right?
Yeah, and so what we're finding now is that the National Association of Realtors they are estimating that their annual home sales are going to be below 5 million. They've basically estimated that it's going to be 4.8 million now, and so they brought it down from where they were thinking, which was 5.2, 5.3 million. So it's a significant number. And it's the weakest pace since November of 2015. So it's definitely happening on the national level. And one of the things that we look at is we look at foot traffic. And we have a report that we can look at not only nationally, and the foot traffic is this, it's showings. And they are a precursor to pending sales, which are a precursor to closed sales. Just the one follows the other. And nationally speaking, showings are way down over last year. And they were way down over the year before, the pandemic year. They were huge, the pandemic year. So for the 2 straight years now, showings are less each year. Part of that reason is because in inventory, there's not enough inventory.
Right.
And that's still the case. So what we're finding is you think, well, okay, that must be the way it is in New Hampshire. When you look at New Hampshire, we are right there, baby. We are right there where we were last year for showings. As a matter of fact, even a little bit ahead.
Yeah.
So you look at the national market and you go, oh, there's not a lot of people out there looking now. Things are tough. No. As a matter of fact, if there were more houses on the market, we would probably see even more showings.
No question.
So I'll just give you some of the highlights, Di. Lawrence Yun, who is the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors, his quote, "We are in a housing recession." And knowing Lawrence Yun, as I do over the years, he's not one that sort of beats the negative drum very often. And so for him to say this, says, you know what? I believe that the national news will eventually get here. We are a little bit insulated, as for all the reasons we talked about in our podcast yesterday. We're a little bit insulated, but sooner or later the winds are going to get this. They're going to get here, and there are a couple other things to look at. I'm just going to bring about is when we look at mortgage rates. mortgage rates have played a role in the affordability. There's no question about it. And as a result, that's sort of created a little bit of a slowing in sales. Sales are slowing. The relentless rise in home prices is showing some signs of easing after repeated new highs. So what are the things that are sort of the telltales, if you will, of the market changing? Inventory. Well, first of all, the showings, then inventory starts to build, days on market. Days on market in New Hampshire are actually down. The July numbers are down 1 day. It's 16 days versus 16 last year, 15 this year. 1 day less. So the days on market are less. But inventory's ticked up just a hair. So the inventory last year at this time was 1.6 months of supply. Now it's 1.7 months. It's a difference of 3 days. And you think, well, that's not a big deal. But it's up. So the supply is up. It's something to look at on an ongoing basis. We'll see if supply starts to build. By no means is it a buyer's market until we get to some level of balance. And we used to say
6 months, right?
6 months. And now I think the balance is really going to be somewhere around 3 or 4 months.
Yeah, I agree with that. Can you explain, just in case someone doesn't know or doesn't remember, what determines or what the definition of 6 months to 3 months, what that means?
The supply?
Yes.
So if you look at there's about 2,000 houses on the market. And what you're really doing is you take the annual sales for the previous year and you divide it out over the 12 months and you come up with a monthly number. And then you take what your current inventory is and say how many months would it take based on the monthly number for that inventory to be all sold if nothing else came on the market. And so that we are looking at 1.7 months. So it's about 52 days of supply. If nothing else came on the market in 52 days, it would all be gone. And so that is still a strong seller's market. The other thing we're looking at, and you can maybe speak to this, is what about buyer traffic in terms of offers? We were seeing 20, 30 offers on properties in some cases. And what's going on there?
I think, again, in certain price brackets and certain locations, we're seeing multiple offers, maybe not in the 20s as often, but certainly 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and occasionally double digits. But the interesting thing with inventory is, it's interesting to me that the days on market is, I think you said one less day, the average.
Yeah.
It's so skewed because, there's a particular local town that I watch. And there are many, 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 many listings that have been on for quite some time. And so really, they're just stagnant. They're just on the market, right? If we took all of those away, there is really not much supply. And what comes on and goes off, what's priced properly and positioned properly. And I feel like a broken record, but it's true. And so it's surprising to me that those stagnant, if you will, listings haven't skewed the numbers more. When I look up,
here's why I think that is.
Yeah.
It will, because if the average days on market is based on the properties that have sold.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Wow.
So when you do that, here's what happens is the properties that have sold are the ones that are priced right, conditioned right, ready to roll. They sell and your average days on market is not very, very high. It takes more time than we think for the properties that are not sold to finally sell, for whether it's pricing or condition, again, to finally sugar into that number. And so we'll see it tick up, but it'll take a while. Here's a way of getting a sense. Compare the sold days on market to the actives days on market, and you'll start to see a difference, especially in that town. You look at that town, it's a smaller number. You can say, all right, there's 30 properties on the market, and 15 of them have been on the market for
in excess of 60 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you can start to say what we're going to find is that the days on market, it'll almost feel like it's not changing, it's not changing, it's not changing, it's changing.
Crazy me for not understanding that.
Yeah. Well, see,
It's a little nugget. I
glad
learned something today. Thank you. So finally.
It's a daily occurrence in our household. Yeah. Except it's in the reverse.
Yeah, I don't know about
I
that.
learned
But
from
anyway,
you.
we'll learn from each other, and hopefully other people learn from both of us, right?
Yeah.
So that's a high note. We'll leave it with that. So thank you again for tuning in. Be sure to follow us, Good Deeds with a Mission, on your favorite podcast platform, or subscribe to our YouTube channel.